I track almost everything that goes in and almost everything that comes out of my bank accounts. And I have done this now for a number of years, where I originally built a spreadsheet and added to it as new expenses came on board and new forms of income came into play. Now, almost a decade in, I have a much better understanding of the more important things to track, and I have refined my spreadsheet so that I am not wasting time capturing and collecting data that is never going to be useful. And I figured the spreadsheet might be useful for others, so why not share it with anyone who's interested in keeping an eye on where their money is going. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese, and in this video, I'm going to show you the spreadsheet that I use to almost track everything related to finance in my life. And as a little bonus for you, the viewer, I have made a simple version of the spreadsheet available for download if you are interested in using it yourself. I've left a link down in the description below, so feel free to take a copy for yourself to use for your own personal needs if that's something you're interested in having for yourself. While you're down there, if I could ask you to quickly hit that like and subscribe button, it really does go a long way for the channel, and I really do appreciate the support as well. Now, like I just mentioned, this is the simple version available for download. I have a more complex version with a bit more functionality, which I'll talk a bit more about at the end of this video for the real fanatics, the people who are really interested in tracking almost everything. Not really relevant right now. It's something to definitely stick around for if you're interested in a really functional spreadsheet. Like I said, I'll talk about it at the end of this video. With that being said, let's jump right into the revised tracker.
Okay, here is the revised tracker. This is for 2022, and I will probably make an update for 2023 for when the time comes. But right now we are going into 2022, and this is the spreadsheet to use for your personal finance. If you look down here, you'll see different sheets which have different purposes. There are 7 in total for this download, and we're going to start with you being your own personal finances. Understand that everything can be molded, everything can be changed. I just have information in here which is based on my setup, and this can be changed to suit your needs in any way, shape, or form. You are more than welcome to do that yourself, but I'm going to go through it how I track my own finances, and it's a setup that works quite well for me. Just think about it. We're going to go from left to right. I'm going to do it in sections, and we're just going to start here on the left. I have 5 bank accounts. They are all offsets, which offset my mortgage, and the way I've set up my split between what I'm paid is like this. So for my spending account, 15% goes into that every time I'm paid, 25% for my expenses and bills, 50% for my big savings or my house, 10% for my fun, and $50 every fortnight for my emergency fund, because I'm paid on a fortnightly basis. Now, this will be different for everyone depending on their living situation and their ability to save. Just understand that I use a 5 bank account system, and then on the last column here, this is the total of all of them combined. Moving on to H and I have the dates, and I have 2 separate dates which are 1 day apart. The fortnight ending is the Friday of every week that I'm going to be paid in 2022. This will obviously change depending on when you're paid and the frequency as to when you're paid, and you can change these dates around. I'm just using them for the example to keep it nice and simple. The date of the payslip. Now, this is the day I'm actually paid, and the reason why I use this date over the end of the fortnight is because I might be needing to pay some important bills. There might be something coming up that I need to make sure that money's going into that account, so I like to track the actual day that I am paid. In column J, we have a countdown, and what it does is it grabs the current date, as in today's date, the day of recording this video, so you should be able to do some quick maths and work out that it's going to be today's date subtracted by this date. So on the 13th of January, if you subtract 20 days, you'll notice that I am recording this on Christmas Eve, because South Australia is COVID-ridden and we can't really go out anywhere. So I'm being cautious, I'm being good, and I'm recording a video. I think this is really useful. I like to know when I'm going to be paid. And as you change these dates, if we change it to the 1st of the 1st, 2023, you'll see that it adds an entire year to that countdown. Just understand that it's quite useful, and it will change based on you changing these dates here. Final column I'm going to explain before I actually start filling out some information to give you an example is your net pay. Same thing again, your gross pay is before tax, your net pay is after tax. It's important to track your net pay because that is what you're going to be able to break up and transfer between your accounts. That's the best thing to track. Your gross pay before you pay tax isn't really relevant in this scenario. Now, I'll get into statistics in a minute. We're just going to skip over that and come over here to the calculator. All it really is it gives you a little box here to put in a figure, and when you put that figure in, I'm going to use $1,000 as the example. We get a breakdown of all of the percentages that correlate to that 1,000. So 10% of 1,000 is 100 and 50% is $500. And as you can see, I've got some percentages up here, which correlate to the more important ones down here, as that's what I'm putting into my bank accounts. The interesting thing here is that I'm going to be putting $50 into my emergency fund. So let's say I started at 0 and there goes $50. So I got paid $1,000 in my net pay here, but I actually am only going to have access to $950 to transfer between the other accounts. So if we look at 15% of 950, it's $142.50. Let's say all of these accounts started with a balance of 0. So I'm just going to put in what they actually are based on what the calculator is telling me, because it calculates automatically, and all you have to do is change that top number. So 10% is $95. And as you can see, it's added up the total of all of these columns here to be $1,000. Okay. Moving on to these statistic components here. So we're going to start from the bottom up. So it's going to start the expenses at the first of the year, because I like to track from the first day of the year to the last day of the year. I don't like to track in terms of financial year, because it's more exciting to go from the first day to the last day. And in the statistics column here, I also like to track my salary revision. So let's say on the first day of this coming year, I was given a promotion to $50,000. So I would stick it in there and it would live there for the entire year. Let's say on the second day of the year, I was really lucky and I got another promotion of $50,000. So now I'm earning $100,000 a year. That's how I would be keeping track of my salary revisions over the years, over the entire year, whatever it may be. I think it's an important statistic to keep track of, especially as you start to move up in your career. I think it's an interesting one to look back on and go, that's how my salary changed over those years. Moving up in the columns here, I keep track of my expenses and my total holiday costs, which we'll get to in a minute. Basically, as I scroll across here, you'll see in green, I have a bunch of expenses, which I'll talk about. And there is, on personal development, there is a holiday expense tracking component, which adds up everything that's contained within there. We'll come back to that when we add some numbers in to see it updating. Now, next, I have some general information. I like to see how many times I'm paid, and what this does is just counts the number of times that money has gone into these bank accounts throughout the year. It doesn't count the amounts, it's just counting the number of times paid. Each year will be a little bit different, depending on if you change jobs, if you have golden months in the year. As you can see here, there's a golden month in December of 2022 where you're paid 3 times in that month. It's just an interesting count. Also, in the general information tab, I've got the average earnings. This will average out your net pays, which I think is an important one as well to see, depending on if you're someone who does casual work, if you're someone who does overtime, you can see what you roughly earned every time you were paid on average across the entire year. And then there's a counter as well, which adds up the entire net to date. So this is all of the money you've earned. If I put money in here, let's say I put 5,000, I put 5,000, you'll see that they start populating, they start calculating. Moving up again. Now these are broken, but they're not. They're not currently broken. They're only broken because these numbers are all 0. If I put some money in here, let's say I put 5,000, let's say I put 3,000, 2,000, 5,000. What this is doing is it's going to calculate your average savings over the course of the entire year. It's going to calculate that over each fortnight, each week, because that's just divided by 2. That's dividing this by 2. And then it will also calculate your average spending. And this here is going to basically be this number minus L8, which is the average savings. So if we get this to be different to 1,000, so I just punch in some random numbers, you'll see that your accounts are changing and this changes. Don't know why that did that. That's interesting. If we format paint that, it goes back to normal. But as you can see, this person here is a bit reckless because their money's all over the shop. The point being that it adds it up, it tracks it, and it does it pretty accurately. I've been using these formulas like I've just shown you up here for a long time. If you want to adjust them, you can change these values here, which will change the cells. So for example, if we didn't want it to come all the way down to number 33 and we only wanted it to go to number 14, we could put number 14 in here and replace all the 33s, and that would give us the same number realistically, because this formula doesn't include zeros. There you go. And that's pretty much all you really need. As you fill out these boxes here and these boxes here, things will change over the course of the year. You can change the dates in the download. You won't have them here. A simple tip is when you know the dates. So let's go one day forward. So the 1st of January 2022, and then let's say the 27th of January 2022. What you can do is you can grab both of them, drag that all the way down, and you'll see that the dates will update automatically. If I scroll across here, like I said earlier, anything in yellow means it's going to have to be updated. Same with anything in red realistically. Now, this is my expense tracking. I like to track certain things for certain reasons, and I've left it open for you to track whatever you want. I personally like to track my petrol spending. I drive a car that uses a little bit more expensive fuel because I'm silly, and that's one thing that I like to spoil myself on. But throughout the year, I like to track it. So every time I put petrol in my car, I keep track. I've done it for 4 years, and I think it's really useful because I've seen how my petrol spending has gone up, and it really shows me how I would definitely opt out if it became too expensive. I like to track my haircuts because I used to go pretty regularly, kind of going bald at the moment. Haha, this won't be there for much longer, but for now I track my haircuts. Every time I'm spending money, let's say I spend $35 on a haircut, I get to track those dates. I get to see how long in between those haircuts were. I do the same with social sport. I play social netball, social volleyball. I fill in for soccer teams every now and then. I like to keep track of how much I spend on sport throughout the year. Now, I used to track things like food at work and my phone bill, which I don't track anymore because they are no longer expensive or existent at all. I pay a one-off phone bill once a year, so that's all the columns that it's going to take up, so I've removed it. And the same goes for food at work. I work from home now, so I'm not really spending a lot of food at work anymore. I don't think it's worth tracking. It's not as important. Now, what I've done here is I've left these empty for you to fill out whatever you want to fill out in them. You can use this, for example, as food at work if that's something you wanted to keep track of. I would just make that black once you get out of it. Let's change the text to black, and voila, you now have another expense you can keep track of. So let's say you spend $4 on a coffee and it was on the first day of the year. You can keep track of all of the money you've spent, which will add up as we add numbers in here, and it won't only add up here, it will also, if we come back across, it will add up in your total expenses, because what this is going to track is all of the totals across these here. So just keep that in mind as well. I think it's pretty useful to keep track of some of the things that you want to understand what you're spending money on. Finally, for this sheet, to keep it nice and simple, I've added one-off expenses, and this is for anything that's relatively big that you need to keep track of. I put the type of purchase in, I put the date that the purchase was made, and I put how much it costs. That's pretty much it. If, let's say, for example, you spent $500, let's say you did it again on the first day of the year, and you spent it, the reason was new uniform for work. You can now keep track of all of that information in there for the sake of just big expenses, which will be tracked here in your big expenses. Moving on to sheet 2. This is for investments and cryptocurrency and keeping track of it. As someone who has cryptocurrency, I would say not an insignificant amount of cryptocurrency. I like to keep track. Now, all of this is pre-populated. None of this is representative of what I actually hold, but I've just populated it just for the sake of keeping it nice and simple. So we've got all these columns up here. We've got the crypto code, the type of trade, who owns those coins, quantity of tokens, the value per token, date of transaction, the amount invested in total, your transaction fees. Keep this in mind that these are tax deductions, and the tax event that occurs, and the tax owed to the ATO. If you're within Australia, that could be changed to the IRS if you were in America. Now, here are some examples. I hold VET, I hold ETH, and I do hold Bitcoin, but I hold different amounts to what you're about to see. The types of trades, I've just used examples where I've bought some and I've sold some. I'm the owner. The quantity of tokens, so this is how many I've gotten out of that. Don't know why that number says that. Oh, that's right. I've sold that much of VeChain. Let's use that as the example. And the values at the time taken. That value will be shown on whatever exchange you're trading on, the date that the transaction took place, the amount that I've invested, so it's minus 3,000 here because I've subtracted that out, so you can see that the money that I've actually put in, not what it's actually worth, is contained within that. Then the transaction fee itself, so $60 over each transaction. That's just a blanket example. Again, it will be different depending on how much you're investing, but it gives you a rough estimate and understanding of what it's cost you to purchase and sell these cryptos. And then the tax event, which comes with a nice little drop down box, depending on if it's a capital gain, a capital loss income tax, a trust distribution, foreign income, or it's not applicable, then it's not applicable. And then you can actually put that number in there. So when it gets to tax time, you can actually do some quick maths and help your accountant figure out the numbers so they don't charge you an arm and a leg for it. Now, I've also got counters in here as well. So if the ticket is VET, it will count the number within here. I can obviously change these parameters, and I can obviously add more as time goes on. And as you can see here, it says that I'm holding 100,000 tokens. Now, if you look at these two here, the sum of them, I've kind of got it hidden, whoopsies, is just over 100,000. It's actually 116,945.39 tokens. So if you subtract that from that number, you'll see here that I hold exactly 100,000. As an example, let's say I wanted to put some new VeChain on the board. I've purchased it, so it's a buy. It's not a sell, it's not a swap, it's not an airdrop, it's a buy. So I click buy. I'm going to change the color to green because I want it to be that color. I could conditionally format it, but I'm lazy. And we're going to put it's me again. And let's say I buy 500,000 tokens. And bam, look at that. It's automatically updated because it's done a search through here for VeChain and it's looked for all of the numbers and added them up. You can add and take as many rows as you want just by inserting columns here. And the whole purpose of this, again, is just to keep track of everything you're buying and selling. I think it's nice, neat, and tidy, and it's something that I'll definitely be taking to my accountant when I go next year. Same goes down here. If you need to add new ones, you can just insert a new column, copy the formula, and just change the ticket. Let's say we bought bread, because let's say there's one called bread. So I want to go Reese bread. Then over here, I'm just going to grab this entire equation. Then I'm going to come down here, I'm going to paste it, I'm going to change F to bread. So where there's bread, let's say it was a buy, and let's say I bought 400, 500, that's fine. Voila, there we go. We've just added bread by simply adding a row, copying the equation, and putting the ticket in and the amount. And you can fill out all of the other information as you go. Generally, if you're not day trading, this is going to be a pretty easy way to keep track of your crypto without having to worry too much about logging onto the exchange and going through the back end to find that information. The final thing on this page is the notes section. Let's say you want to invest $5,000 this year and you want to keep track of how much you've invested. So there we go, 2022, I've just made a note. Let's say I buy $1,000, I could say $4,000 left to invest this year. And voila, I'm keeping track. I'm adding notes. It's a lot of fun. It's really useful. You can expand these, you can reduce them, you can delete them. It doesn't really matter. They're there for your convenience. Okay, moving on to the third sheet, which is investing into shares. If you have a look here, it looks very similar to investing into cryptocurrency. We have a number of columns with amount of information that is not representative of what I'm holding. It's more just a snapshot to give you confidence in the ability to A, track older historical investments. This probably won't be here, so you might have to add it yourself in the actual download, but I've just left this in here and put some examples in because I think it's a good explainer to show you how I'd break up financial years. So same deal again. Let's keep it nice and simple because it looks overly complicated. From left to right, we've got the fund code. Here's some VAS and VDHG, which are Vanguard ETFs, and I've just thrown in a random one in there as well to keep it nice and simple. Let's say you've bought this quantity of shares. Let's say that it cost you this much per share. Let's say that the date of the transaction was here. Let's say that the amount invested was here. Let's say the transaction fee based on what would be receipted to you. Let's say if it was a dividend, this is a drop down. Is it a dividend? Yes, no, or not applicable. Let's say the dividend amount was XYZ, so they've paid a certain amount of money at the time that a dividend was paid. And then let's say if you've got your dividends reinvested on a reinvestment plan, are they going back into the total and are they going to add to the quantities down here? And then is it a tax event? Same thing again. Is it a capital gain, a capital loss, income tax, or is it not applicable? Showing down here, it's the same setup as before. It's looking for that ticker that you've put into the left column over here, and then it's counting it if it finds it within the box. So according to this spreadsheet, I've got 61 shares of VAS, 94 of VDHG, and 250 of SLA, which you can look those tickers up on any exchange in Australia on the ASX. They're just good examples to show you the breakdown of how dividends are paid, how purchasing would be recorded, and it's a snapshot without having to log in and look for documentation. The same thing again, I've left a section for notes. This, to me, realistically, I'd just be starting it in 2022 if you're starting the spreadsheet here. So every time you want to add something, just right click and insert, and you've got another row that will continue searching through all of these boxes without breaking the formulas. So here is the personal development sheet. Now, the main reason why I set this up originally when I started tracking it back in 2017 was A, I wanted to know if having a gym membership was worth it, and B, I wanted to know if I was exercising enough based on my weeks throughout the year. Now, I can't remember what I trained 2 weeks ago, let alone 3 months ago. So what I thought I would do is try and keep track track of every day throughout the year, and this is a pretty easy way to do it. It starts on the first day of 2022, which is a Saturday, and basically you can just come in here, grab the body part, and add it into the tracker. So let's say I went to the gym and I did chest, and then I did abs, and then I did back, and then I did legs, and so on, and I'm adding all these days in. You can add your borders back, and then you can start grabbing them from here, and it won't mess up the formatting. Basically, it's going to add up and count all of the times you've trained these specific body parts. So let's just imagine all of these are shoulders because you don't train anything else because you're a bit lazy at the gym. You're going to see that you're focusing on body parts that just aren't right. Or for example, let's say you don't go for like 4 months and you've just got nothing in there, and we're in week 26 of the year. It's definitely going to be a good way to indicate to you that you need to pick up the pace or maybe cancel your gym membership. So by simply copying and pasting, that's all I'm doing is I'm grabbing arms and I'm putting arms in here. I'm going for a run, I'm putting a run in here. All I like to do is keep track of everything that I'm doing throughout the year. Every single week, it's pretty easy to do it, and that gives me a pretty good indicator. So it gives me my weekly total, it gives me the specific body parts I'm training, and overall how many times I've gone in total all the way down to the end of the year, moving on to the next year. So the other thing that I want to keep track of in my personal development tab is my expenses on holidays. I don't think they belong in the personal finance tracking because these expenses are a lot more common, and I just don't think that going on 2 holidays a year are worth adding into this section here. You're filling up petrol, getting your hair cut a hell of a lot more often. The thing to note is that I've got a counter which will add up everything in cell Q3 of the personal development tab, which is if we go to Q and we go to 3, you'll see that it comes out here. This total is tracking what you've spent in total on flights, accommodation, food, shopping, activities, expenses, and travel in 2022. So what you do is you come here and you copy R to U, Control C, right click on V, insert copied cells, and you have a brand new holiday. Let's say we're going to the Gold Coast because why not? Up in Queensland, and we're going on the 1st of Jan 2022. I'm going to make that black to make it official, and now we can start adding in our expenses. The one thing you need to note is that every time you add a new holiday, you're going to need to add basically this equation to make sure that it adds everything next to it. So what I'm doing is I'm going to add a plus, I'm going to copy everything except the equals, and the only things you're going to change are these values here, where you're going to make them in line with the columns. Now it's a little bit back to front. The range that we're looking is the category here. So the first one in this scenario will be an X because that's column X, and you're also going to change this T to be an X as well. Then across here, you're going to come here and click W, and then you're going to click W or replace that S there. Then you're going to keep flights for this first example, but to do it for the rest, all you're going to do is from the plus, copy it there, press enter, then you're going to come down, bring it across, and you're going to see this accom here. You want that to be the criteria that it's assessing for accommodation. So I'm going to write accom in space of flights. Now I'm going to go through and change all of the flights because we're using the same equation. So this will be food spending. We're going to change this one here to shopping, where I change flights to shopping. We're going to come down again. We're going to change flights again to activity. And I'll explain each of these categories in just a second. I just wanted to make sure that you understand the concept of, to make sure the equations work, you're going to need to tell the formula where to look and what to look for. So I've now added in each of these here, the next equations, which will be tracking both columns. So I've gone to the Gold Coast. Let's say I've spent $500 on flights. So I've got a drop down box of everything. There are my flights. So if we go all the way back to the front, I've gone $500 on flights. That's the total cost I've spent on this holiday in particular so far. It's keeping track of flight costs across all of my holidays, and the total is 500. So if I come over to here, you'll see that the total holiday cost, just as a snapshot right there, is showing me everything I need to see. So now we can go through and populate this holiday. Let's say we spend a bunch of money, and let's say we go shopping. Let's say we go and do some white water rafting. Let's say we have some random expense, like I have to go get hospital bills because I get sick white water rafting, and let's say I have to catch an ambulance, which costs me the most apparently out of the entire holiday. So now I've spent $1,000 on my holiday. I have the breakup of what I've spent on each of these things throughout the year and the total across all of my holidays throughout the year. Just as an example, if I put like 500 here 2 times, we should add 1,000 for any of these really. There you go. You can see that that number is increasing based on the number of holidays I'm going on. Same goes again if I want to add a new holiday. I just come in here, right click on Z, insert copied cells, and then do the same with the equations to make sure it's tracking between these, and you can have unlimited holidays and keep track of all your expenses. It's something I like to do. That's something I wanted to incorporate in this video. All right, moving on to tax. Now this one is a simple one. I basically keep track of 3 things for my tax. I keep track of my work from home. I keep track of anything that I basically have a receipt for, and I keep track of my travel for work. So in the first column here, work from home, the start date, let's say it was the 1st of the 1st, 2022. And let's say it was the end of that week, being the 5th of the 1st, 2022. And let's say I worked my normal 38-hour work week. It's just going to calculate based on what the ATO lets us have. It's going to count the hours worked as I go through here. Let's say I did a 100-hour work week. And let's say I did a 1,000-hour work week, and so on. It shows you throughout the year how much you've worked from home and what you're going to be able to claim. So next up is any purchase or any type of donation or anything that I can claim against my personal income based on my spending throughout the year. So let's say I make a donation. Let's say I make it for the Cancer Foundation. Let's say it was again on the 1st of the 1st, 2022. And then let's say I put $9 billion in because I'm very generous. Voila, I can then keep track of all of that information, nice and beautifully formatted, and all of that can be quoted to my accountant at the end of the year. And then if he wants to see further receipts and information, I can dig that up because I have the date that the transaction took place. I can check my bank statements and see where that money's come from. It just keeps a total. Nice and easy to present that information, unless you have to present receipts, which in most scenarios, just doing simple tax, it's going to be pretty easy to do that. And finally, travel for work. So where are you starting from? Let's say home, that's not an address, you just put your address in. And let's say your final address is work, put your work address in there. The date, again, keep it nice and simple, 1st of the 1st, 2022. Reason for travel, inspecting building, I don't know, there are lots of different reasons. Visiting client, can't spell today, visiting client. How many kilometers am I going to claim? I just look up on Google Maps how far I'm traveling. Let's say I went 35 Ks. That is going to be equal to whatever the ATO is letting you claim this year, and it's currently 72 cents. So I'm going to put 0.72, and as you can see, I can claim $25 for that piece of travel on that day. Let's say I do this throughout the year. I'm just going to drag this down, and I will have that consistently updated every time I go traveling and have to claim kilometers for my work. At the end of the year, I can tell my accountant how many kilometers I traveled, and I've got the logbook diary right here. So if the ATO were to audit me, they can see all of the information presented nice and pretty right here. Moving on to sheet number 6, and this is where I keep track of all of my house information just throughout the year to make sure that everything is in order and everything is in check. I'm going to put the loan start amount. Let's say I take out a loan of $500,000, and then we're going to go from there. So in here, I'm going to put my dates when repayments are due. So let's say it's the 1st, it's the 15th, and it's the, I have to look it up on a calendar because I can't do quick maths, but it's going to be the 1st, it's going to be the 15th, and then it's going to be the 29th. So let's say the 29th of the 1st, 2022. So then I should just be able to drag this down indefinitely, and this is when repayments are going to be made. So what's going to happen from here is that we're going to start with our original balance of 500,000, and in this column here, it's going to show us the minimum value in this column. All we're going to do is we're going to use the original value above that, so the last applicable value. We're going to minus our repayment and add any interest that we have to pay. So in this instance, let's say we paid $2,000 for this fortnight. Let's put the equation in here to calculate the principal automatically, which is simply going to be D7 minus F7 in this instance, which is just basically the repayment total minus the interest. And then let's say we don't pay any interest for this reporting period. So we'll be left with $498,000. Fantastic. Let's drag this all the way down now. And then let's do some more repayments. Let's say we pay $5,000 this repayment period. And we pay $2,000 in interest. And then we drag this bad boy down. And then it's going to show you the differences. So as we go on and on and on, we could pay the same amounts all the time. It doesn't really matter too much. As we keep going down this list, we might pay 500 in interest, 200 in interest. These are going to be pretty consistent over a long period of time. But as you can see, we are reducing our home loan. We're keeping track of that. and we're keeping track of the total repayment, the principal paid, and the interest paid, which I think is all pretty important throughout the year. And it's definitely important if this is going to be an investment property, and I'll explain why right now. In column H and I, this is literally going to keep track of all of the rent that you're paid. So let's say you've got your house rented because it's an investment property. This is important. Let's say you're getting $400 a week. I know I'm writing 8,000 for. I'm being a bit lazy here, but let's write 800, 800, 800. It's going to total that up. You can put the dates that you paid the rent during the payment period, being whatever it is from when you start tracking it. And you can just put those dates in this column here pretty easily. And that's going to, again, be a piece of information that is going to be very useful come tax time. I like to highlight the cells which introduce a new financial year and are inclusive, and you can make them whatever color you want. So this here is a new financial year. You could go review up the top here and go new comment, and you could go new financial year and add the comment there. So then you've always got a comment if you ever want to read that piece of information. Also delete that thread too. So that's just a bit of a nice and easy way to keep track of your rent income, your repayments to your loan, and it shows over a long period of time. I've been doing it for about 3 years. Watching the number reduce significantly, it feels really great. The other key things to keep track of when it comes to a property is any inspections carried out if it's an investment. And I like to keep track of my interest rate because I'm curious to see over the life of the loan how my interest rate fluctuates, whether it be fixed, whether it be principal and interest, variable. It doesn't really matter. I just like to, every time it changes, just stick it in there, and then below it I stick the date. So let's say it's 3,000. I don't know why I'm doing that. Let's say it is on the 1st of the 1st 2022, and let's say we go to 3%, and then let's say on the 2nd it changes again for some reason, and now it's 9%, which would be ludicrous. It just shows that information. It's historical and it will be there forever because this is going to keep track of that information. The final thing to keep track of for your property is any expenses against the property, especially if it's an investment property again. So you keep track. So let's say you've got to buy tools for plumber. Tools for plumber. Bam. So I've had to fix a toilet. Let's even write new toilet. Toilet replacement. How much did it cost me? It cost me $250. And what was the date? Did it on the first day of the year again. I am now keeping a record of all of the expenses that are being made against that investment property. So when I go to do my tax, I can claim them because there are lots of different things you can claim when having an investment property. It's very important to understand what you can and can't claim. And that is a topic for another video. I have made videos talking about it before. Have a look at tax on my channel. It will explain some of that information. The home ownership playlist as well should explain some of the key aspects as to what you can and can't claim when coming around to tax time for an investment property. That is your house sheet. And the final sheet is metrics. Now this just goes through each of the sheets. So we've got your investment into cryptocurrency sheet. You've got investment into shares. You've got your personal development, your tax. All of these are basically drop downs. So if we go to personal development and we come across to the holiday section here where it's got categories, you'll see that we've got drop downs. That's where all this information is being stored. So what I like to do when I'm not adding things to this sheet here is I just right click it and I go hide, and then it's hidden. If you want to unhide it, I just right click on any sheet, go unhide, and you can see in this little pop-up box here. Oh, for some reason on OBS it doesn't show it, but if you right click it where my mouse cursor is moving, it allows me to unhide a sheet, which there it is there. So fun piece of information when I right click. Apparently you can't see the pop-up in OBS, but that doesn't matter too much. I'm just going to hide that sheet there. The point overall is that this here is the spreadsheet in a nutshell. It's pretty straightforward. It's not tracking a crazy amount of information, and all of it is kind of on a weekly basis. At the end of the week, you could update this throughout the year. You'd probably be spending about 10 to 15 minutes going through each of these sheets and adding things. For example, you're paid, add this information in, move on. At the end of the week, have a look at all the expenses you're tracking, add this information in, move on. Investments into crypto aren't going to be too often because you're not probably day trading, I'm going to assume, if you're using this spreadsheet. So again, it's going to be pretty simple to add things as they come up. Same with your shares. You're not going to be adding them very often. Personal development is probably the one you're going to spend a bit of time in because if you're keeping track of your exercise, it's something you want to do. Again, it's still pretty easy at the end of the week. You could just add in what you've trained. Same with a holiday again. At the end of a holiday, you come back, you've tracked everything in your notes, stick it in there. You can see how much you spent on holidays over the course of the year. Tax, work from home, probably get a bit of love because that's going to be something you touch relatively often because every week is different. Tax claims and travel for work might be a little bit different depending on if you're deployed or not. And then your house account, depending on the scenario of if it's an investment mainly, but if you're going to keep track of your loan, it's going to be once a fortnight, once a month, depending on your repayments. Now, for anything that you want to duplicate, so a good example is your house account. So if you right click that sheet, which I know you can't see the pop-up, but there's a selection option called move or copy, a little pop-up box where my mouse is moving will appear. You can click on copy to the same tracker. Then there's a box which says create a copy. And if you create a copy, it will add it over here. You can drag this sheet across and you can right click rename and we go house number 2. And once again, you're about to have a brand new spreadsheet which allows you to keep track of another property. So you put the address, you right click rename, let's say it's 1 Street because that's a very clever name, and there's house number 1. Let's say you've got the house next door as well, so 2 Street. You can keep track of those houses individually, rename all of these to whatever you want. Let's say your name is Jericho. All of that information can be changed and molded to suit your needs. And that, in a nutshell, is the tracker.
Now, at the start of this video, I mentioned that I am working with a more complex version of this spreadsheet, and that's because I wanted to take aspects from previous spreadsheets, data that is kind of historical data that's important to me. I've taken that and I've moved it into this current spreadsheet, which allows me to keep track of important elements that I might look back on when I'm older, or I might use it for information to provide to others based on trajectories of careers and things like that. I also have a sheet for my business, which tracks all of my outgoing expenses for my company and all of the incoming income, delete repeated word much, basically everything that I need to track regarding my business, because at the moment I'm not making ridiculous amounts of money from multiple income sources. It's quite easy to track myself. I don't need to go to a third-party program, for example, like Xero, which I know a lot of businesses use in the big bad world. So at the moment, just having this sheet in my spreadsheet is pretty easy to contain all my expenses, all of my income for the business, and it's just basically got any relevant information I need about it for tax time or for any type of finance related information that I need to provide to people. If you were really interested in getting your hands on this more complex version, or even potentially the same version of the spreadsheet but more tailored to your needs, I'm actually going to offer that service out to people if they were interested. Go have a look on my Patreon. I have a couple of tiers which will break down how I'm approaching this, but essentially as someone who's a pretty small creator on the platform, but someone who really enjoys this type of work, I want to help people who are interested in using a spreadsheet for this particular reason, to track their finances, to understand how to set goals and work towards them, and then use the spreadsheet itself as motivation to really continue on with basically sticking to that plan. And so I'm offering a couple of services through my Patreon. If you were interested, it's mainly going to help me in terms of giving me the opportunity to continue making content at this rate. I think it's useful to some people. Definitely people have given me feedback that it is useful, but while I'm still a small creator, I have the opportunity to do one-on-ones, to be able to speak with people, to be able to message people and basically tailor things for them if they're interested in having stuff like that in their day-to-day life. So go check it out. The link is also in the description down below, and that's why I left it towards the end of this video for anyone who makes it this far and is interested in those services. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to discuss as well what I'm offering, and I can give you a bit more insight into what I'm willing to do to basically assist you in that way. And that's pretty much it, really. I just wanted to go over the spreadsheet today. I really wanted to dive into the important aspects of it, and I wanted to tell you about the service that I am offering as someone who has done this for a long time, seeing the benefits, and helped some of my own friends in different ways where they still watch my videos. They use the spreadsheet themselves and they've given me feedback saying that it's really good. It's really helped them in many different ways in terms of saving, in terms of setting goals, planning ahead for the future, and understanding how their money moves. Just as a disclaimer as well, just understand that the download I've made available is all you really need. It's just if you want to take it that step further, go into a bit more depth in terms of planning, that's where the Patreon component comes into play. I just thought it would be worth mentioning. It's what I do on my channel. It's what I'm comfortable doing. It's not overly difficult for me to assist people no matter where you are in the world. So I thought I'd put it in the video, plug myself for a change, which I have never really done that much. So yeah, I wanted to do it today. And I'm really glad that I did. It's kind of a big step for me. So if you're interested, you know where the links are. You've seen the spreadsheet yourself. If you want to download a copy for yourself to use, Otherwise, that's pretty much all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it was insightful. I hope it was helpful. I hope you use the spreadsheet, and I hope it helps you on your financial journey into the future. With that being said, have a good day, have a good week, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.